There we go. Good evening, dears. Welcome back to Somnium. Hopefully, we'll be able to tell this evening I have been working really hard on getting our vocals together for the mic. I hear just a little bit of a hiss. Hold on. Let's see. Hopefully that will fix it. All right. But yes, welcome in. Please allow yourself to get settled. That also might have lowered my voice just a little bit as well too. All right. Hopefully the hiss is not too bad. If it is, please let me know. I have switched. I have a Shure SM something. SM7DV, and you can use it as a dynamic or condenser mic. So I think because our garden is a little big and airy, we're gonna see if switching it to a dynamic microphone actually helps with not picking up so much of the beautiful open space in which we sit upon. But so welcome in, everyone. These are our Tuesday reading Dreamscrolls, and we love to read some form of fairy tale, or I think probably next week I'm going to try to find some public works for poetry, and we can have like a poetry reading night. But tonight, let me actually go back to the post that discussed us moving to this evening, because normally we stream in the earlier part of the day. But these are the words that I left you with. This reading, I believe, is a little bit more thought-provoking. I think most of the literature and fairy tales that we read are all sort of the how would you say, like, moral of the story sort of narratives. So I left my dreamers with some thoughts. So it says, as you begin the week ahead, let me plant the seed of our next reading with a few reflective questions. What is something that lights your soul on fire? And do you have the moral courage to withstand the flames? Or do you choose to snuff it out instead? Our dreams beg of us to be brave at times, to conquer the quest to our very destiny. So shine brightly as you carry the torch that will light the path to all that you desire. And those thoughts came as an inspiration from our reading tonight. We're going to be reading from Thoreau and his thoughts on John Brown. And the short text is a plea for Captain John Brown. Tonight's dream burns brighter than most. It is a lullaby. It is a reckoning. This is not a tale for soft hearts alone, but for those whose silence has grown too loud. The Dreamstream brings us a plea, not for mercy, but for moral courage. From a man who lived long ago, but who saw very clearly. Henry David Thoreau, a plea for Captain John Brown. And because of this, the type of historical context that this has more than our fairy tales, this is actually speaking about a real moment in history. I think these type of texts are good points to be able to reflect on what things are currently reflecting ourselves as individuals, what things are affecting our society, and what lessons we can learn from the past and bring forward, or what things maybe we have yet to learn. So, what is the moral lesson that we can pick up from this reading today? So, I ask everyone, as always, to just allow themselves to sit back and relax to the sound of my voice. I hope that you have your warm beverage, that you are comfortable wherever you're going to be sat or laying. If you just have me on in your ear as you're going about your day, because in some parts of the world it is the very bright morning. I hope that you have a beautiful day ahead. And for those who are on their way to sleep, I bid you a sweet good night. Welcome to Somnium. I am Mira Mushi, your Dream Siren.
Moshi Moshi.
Oh, good, it's working. Oh, let me fix that as well. No, that should be working.
Moshi Moshi.
There we go. Please feel free to, as always, check out our website that has all of our channel commands on it as well. Our welcoming message is usually Moshi Moshi. Our Oyasumira is our outro message.
URL.
Okay. Thank you all for being here. I hope that you enjoyed tonight's reflective reading. And as you continue to move through your week, remember that your dream siren is holding your dreams close to her heart. And any encouragement that you need, please know that it is always here waiting for you as you take your respite and allow the world to wash off of you and to allow relaxation to enfold you. A Plea for Captain John Brown by Henry David Thoreau. I trust that you will pardon me for being here. I do not wish to force my thoughts upon you, but I feel forced myself. Little as I know of Captain Brown, I would fain do my part to correct the tone and the statements of the newspapers and of my countrymen generally, respecting his character and actions. It cost us nothing to be just. We can at least express our sympathy with and admiration of him and his companies or companions, and that is what I now propose to do. First, as to his history, I will endeavor to omit, as much as possible, what you have already read. I need not describe his person to you, for probably most of you have ever and will not soon forget him. I am told that his grandfather, John Brown, was an officer in the Revolution, that he himself was born in Connecticut about the beginning of this century, but early went with his father to Ohio. I heard him say that his father was a contractor who furnished beef to the army there in the War of 1812, that he accompanied him to the camp and assisted him in that employment, seeing a good deal of military life, more perhaps than if he had been a soldier, for he was often present at the council of the officers. Especially, he learned by experience how armies are supplied and maintained in the field, a work which, he observed, requires at least as much experience and skill as to lead them in battle. He said that few persons had any conception of the cost, even the pecuniary cost of firing a single bullet in war. He saw enough, at any rate, to disgust himself with the military life, indeed, to excite him in a great abhorrence of it, so much so that he thought that he was tempted by the officer of some petty office in the army. When he was about 18, he not only declined that, but he also refused to train when warned, and was fined for it. He then resolved that he would never have anything to do with any war, unless it were a war for liberty. I hope that the music is also not too loud over my voice. When the troubles in Kansas began, he sent several of his sons thirthing to strengthen the party of the Free State men, fitting them out with such weapons as he had, telling them that if the troubles should increase and there should be need of him, he would follow to assist them with his hand and counsel. This, as you all know, he soon after did, and it was through his agency, far more than any others, that Kansas was made free. For a part of his life, he was a surveyor, and at times he was engaged in wool growing, and he went to Europe as an agent about that business. There, as everywhere, he had his eyes about him and made many original observations. He said, for instance, that he saw why the soil of England was so rich, and that of Germany, I think it was, so poor, and thought of writing to some of the crowned heads about it. It was because in England the peasantry live on its soil, which they cultivate, but in Germany they are gathered into villages at night. It is a pity that he did not make a book of his observations. I should say that he was an old-fashioned man in respect for the Constitution, and his faith in the permanence of this Union. Slavery he deemed to be wholly opposed to these, and he was its determined foe. He was by descent and born a New England farmer, a man of great common sense, deliberate and practical as that class is, and tenfold more so. He was like the best of those who stood at Concord Bridge once, on Lexington Common, and on Bunker Hill. Only he was firmer and higher principled than any that I have chanced to hear of as there. It was no abolition lecture that converted him. Ethan Allen and Stark, with whom he may in some respects have compared, were rangers in a lower and less important field. They could bravely face their country's foes, but he had the courage to face his country herself when she was in the wrong. A Western writer says, to account for his escape from so many perils, that he was concealed under a rural exterior, as if in that prairie land a hero should, by good rights, wear a citizen's dress only. He did not go to the college called Harvard, good old alma mater as she is. He was not fed on the pap that is there furnished. As he phrased it, I know no more of grammar than one of your calves. But he went to the great University of the West, where he sedaciously pursued the study of liberty, for which he had early betrayed a fondness, and having taken many degrees, he finally commenced the public practice of humanities in Kansas, as you all know. Such were his humanities, and not any study of grammar. He would have left a Greek accent slanting the wrong way and righted up a fallen man. He was one of that class of whom we hear a great deal, but, for the most part, see nothing at all. The Puritans. It would be in vain to kill him. He died lately in the time of Cromwell, but he reappeared here. Why should he not? Some of the Puritan stock are said to have come over and settled in New England. They were a class that did something else than celebrate their forefathers' day and eat parched corn in remembrance of that time. They were neither Democrat nor Republican, but men of simple habits, straightforward, prayerful, not thinking much of ruler, who did not fear God, not making many compromises, nor seeking after available candidates. In his camp, as one had recently written, and I have myself heard him state, he permitted no profanity. No man of loose morals was suffered to remain there, unless indeed as a prisoner of war. I would rather, said he, have the smallpox, yellow fever, and cholera all together in my camp than a man without principle. It is a mistake, sir, that our people make when they think that bullies are the best fighters, or that they are the fit men to oppose these Southerners. Give me men of good principle, God-fearing men, men who respect themselves, and with a dozen of them, I will oppose any 100 such men as these Beaufort ruffians. He said that if one offended himself to be a soldier under him, he was forward to tell what he could and would do, if he could only get sight of the enemy. He had but little confidence in him. He was never able to find more than a score or so of recruits whom would accept, and only about a dozen among them his sons, in whom he had perfect faith. When he was here, some years ago, he showed to a few a little manuscript book, his orderly book, I think he called it, containing the names of his company in Kansas and the rules by which they bound themselves, and he stated that several of them had already sealed the contract with their blood. When someone remarked that, with the addition of the chaplain. It would have been a perfect Cromwellian troop. He observed that he would have been glad to add a chaplain to the list, if he could have found one who could fill the office worthily. It is easy enough to find one for the United States Army. I believe that he had prayers in his camp morning and evening, nevertheless. He was a man of Spartan habits, and at 16 was scrupulous about his diet at your table, excusing himself by saying that he must eat sparingly and fare hard, as became a soldier or one who was fitting himself for difficult enterprises, a life of exposure. A man of rare common sense and directness of speech, as of action, a transcendentalist above all, a man of ideas and principles. That was what distinguished him, not yielding to a whim or transient impulse, but carrying out the purpose of a life. I noticed that he did not overstate anything, but spoke with bounds. I remember particularly how, in his speech here, he referred to what his family had suffered in Kansas, without ever giving the least vent to his pent-up fire. It was a volcano with an ordinary chimney flue. Also, referring to the deeds of certain border ruffians, he said, rapidly paring away his speech like an experienced soldier, keeping a reserve of force and meaning. They had a perfect right to be hung. He was not in the least a rhetorician. Was not talking to Blancombe or his constituents anywhere. Had no need to invent anything, but to tell the simple truth and communicate his own resolution. Therefore, he appeared incomparably strong, and eloquence in Congress and elsewhere seemed to me at a discount. It was like the speeches of Cromwell compared with those of an ordinary king. Rhetorician. I have to look that up. It's from rhetoric. As for his tact and prudence, I will merely say that at a time of when scarcely a man from the free states was able to reach Kansas by any direct route, at least without having his arms taken from him, he carrying what imperfect guns and other weapons he could collect, openly and slowly drove an ox cart through Missouri, apparently in the capacity of a surveyor, with his surveying compass exposed in it, and so passed unsuspected, and had an ample opportunity to learn the designs of the enemy. For some time after his arrival, he still followed the same profession, when, for instance, he saw a knot of the ruffians on the prairie, discussing, of course, the single topic which then occupied their minds. He would, perhaps, take his compass and one of his sons and proceed to run an imaginary line right through the very spot on which that conclave had assembled. And when he came up to them, he would naturally pause and have some talk with them, learning their news, and, at last, all of their plans perfectly. And having thus completed his real surveying, he would resume his imaginary one and run on his line till he was out of sight. When I expressed surprise that he could live in Kansas at all, With the price set upon his head and so large a number, including the authorities, exasperated against him, he accounted for it by saying, "It is perfectly well understood that I am not that I will not be taken." Much of the time, for some years, he had to skulk in camps or in swamps, suffering from poverty and from sickness, which was the consequence of exposure, befriended only by Indians and a few whites. But of course, it might be known that he was lurking in a particular swamp. His foes commonly did not care to go in after him. He could even come out into a town where there were more border ruffians than free statesmen, and transact some businesses without delaying long, and yet not be molested. For said he, no little handful of men were willing to undertake it, and a large body could not be got together in season. As for his recent failure, we do not know the fact about it. It was evidently far from being a wild and desperate attempt. His enemy, Mr. Villingham, is compelled to say that it was among the best planned and executed conspiracies that ever failed. Not to mention his other successes, was it a failure, or did it show a want of good management to deliver from bondage a dozen human beings and walk off with them by broad daylight for weeks, if not months, at a leisurely pace, through one state after another, for half the length of the North, conscripulous to all parties, with the price set upon his head, going into a courtroom on his way and telling what he had done, thus convincing Missouri that it was not profitable to try to hold slaves in his neighborhood. And this, not because the government menials were lenient, but because they were afraid of him. Yet he did not attribute his success foolishly to his star or to any magic. He said truly that the reason why such greatly superior numbers qualified before him was, as one of his prisoners confessed, because they lacked a cause, a kind of armor which he and his party never lacked. When the time came, few men were found willing to lay down their lives in defense of what they knew to be wrong. They did not like that this should be their last act in this world. But to make haste to his last act and its effects. The newspapers seemed to ignore, or perhaps are really ignorant of the fact, that there are at least as many as 2 or 3 individuals to a town throughout the North who think much as the present speaker does about him and his enterprise. I do not hesitate to say that they are an important and growing party. We aspire to be something more than stupid and timid chattel, pretending to read history and our Bibles, but desecrating every house and every day we breathe in. Perhaps anxious politicians may prove that only 17 white men and 5 Negroes were concerned in the late enterprise, but their very anxiety to prove this might suggest to themselves that all is not told. Why did they still dodge the truth? They are so anxious because of a dim consciousness of the fact, which they do not distinctly face, that at least 1 million of the free inhabitants of the United States would have rejoiced if it had succeeded. They at most only criticize the tactics. Though we wear no crape, the thought of that man's position and probable fate is spoiling many a man's day here at the North for other thinking. If anyone who had seen him here can pursue successfully any other train of thought, I do not know what he is made of. If there is any such who get his usual allowance of sleep, I will warrant him to such who gets his usual I will warrant him to fatten easily under any circumstance which did not touch his body or purse. I put a piece of paper and a pencil under my pillow, and when I could not sleep, I wrote in the dark. On the whole, my respect for my fellow men, except as one may outweigh a million, is not being increased these days. I have noticed the cold-blooded ways in which newspaper writers and men generally speak of this event, as if an ordinary malefactor, though one of unusual pluck, as the governor of Virginia is reported to have said, using the language of Cockpit, the gamiest man he ever saw, had been caught and were about to be hung. He was not dreaming of his foes when the governor thought he looked so brave. It turns what sweetness I had to gall to hear of the remarks of some of my neighbors. When we hear at first that he was dead, one of my townsmen observed that he died as the fool dieth, which one, pardon me, for an instant suggests a likeliness in him dying to my neighbor living. Others, craven-hearted, said despairingly that he threw his life away because he resisted the government. Which way have they thrown their lives, pray? Such as would praise a man for attacking singingly an ordinary band of thieves or murderers? I hear another ask, Yankee-like, what will he gain by it? As if he expected to fill his pockets by this enterprise. Such a one has no idea of gain but in this worldly sense. If it does not lead to a surprise party, if he does not get a new pair of boots or a vote of thanks, it must be failure. But he won't gain anything for it. Well, no, I don't suppose he would get 4 and 6 pence a day for being hung. Take the year round, but then he stands a chance to save a considerable part of his soul. Such a soul. When you do not. No doubt, you can get more in your market for a quart of milk than for a quart of blood, but this is not the market that heroes carry their blood to. That was the last of my tea. It's almost as if he is speaking at Captain Brown's eulogy to speak of his character like that, which is something that is commonly done in remembrance of people after they've passed. You speak of their great deeds. So we can almost imagine this as a eulogy towards Captain Brown from Henry David Thoreau. Such do not know that like the seed is the fruit, and that in the moral world, when good seed is planted, and good fruit is inevitable, and does not depend on our watering and cultivating, that when you plant or bury a hero in his field, a crop of heroes is sure to spring up. This is a seed of such force and vitality that it does not ask our leave to germinate. The momentary charge of balaclava in obedience to a blundering command, proving what a perfect machine the soldier is, has, properly enough, been celebrated by a poet laureate. But the steady and for the most part successful charge of this man for some years against the legions of slavery in obedience to an infinitely higher command is as much more memorable than that, as in intellect and a conscientious man is superior to a machine. Do you think that will go unsung? Served him right, a dangerous man. He is undoubtedly insane. So they proceed to live their sane and wise and altogether admirable lives, reading their Plutarch a little, but chiefly pausing at the feet of Putnam, who was let down into a wolf's den, and in this wise they nourish themselves for brave and patriotic deeds some time or other. The Tract Society could afford to print that story of Putnam. You might open the district schools with the reading of it, and for there is nothing about slavery or the church in it, unless it occurs to the reader that some pastors are wolves in sheep's clothing. The American Board of Commissioners for Foreign Missions even might dare to protest against that wolf. I have heard of boards and of American boards, but it chances that I never heard of this particular lumber till lately. And yet, I hear of Northern men and women and children by families burying a lifetime member in such societies as these. Lifetime membership. A lifetime membership in the grave. You can get buried cheaper than that. Our foes are in our midst and all about us. There is hardly a house but is divided against itself, for our foe is that all but universal woodenness of both head and heart, the want of vitality in man, which is the effect of our vice, and hence are begotten fear, superstition, bigotry, persecution, and slavery of all kinds. We are mere figureheads upon a hulk, with livers in the place of hearts. The curse is the worship of idols, which at length changes the worshipper into a stone image himself, and the New Englander is just as much an idolater as the Hindu. This man was an exception, for he did not set up even a political graven image between him and his God. A church that can never have done with excommunicating Christ while it exists. Away with your broad and flat churches and your narrow and tall churches. Take a step forward and invent a new style of outhouses. Invent a salt that will save you and defend our nostrils. The modern Christian is a man who has consented to say all the prayers in the liturgy, provided you will let him go straight to bed and sleep quietly afterwards. All his prayers begin with, "Now I lay me down to sleep," and he is forever looking forward to the time when he shall go to his long rest. He has consented to perform certain old established charities too, after a fashion, but he does not wish to hear of any new-fangled ones. He does not wish to have any supplementary articles added to the contract, to fit it to the present time. He shows the whites of his eyes on the Sabbath and the blacks all the rest of the week. The evil is not merely a stagnation of blood, but a stagnation of spirit. Many, no doubt, are well disposed, but sluggish by constitution and by habit, and they cannot conceive of a man who is actuated by higher motives than they are. Accordingly, they pronounce this man insane, for they know that they could never act as he does, as long as they are themselves. We dream of foreign countries, of other times and races of men, placing them at a distance in history or space. But let some significant event like the present occur in our midst, and we discover often that distance and this strangeness between us and our nearest neighbors. They are our Austrias and Chinas and South Sea Islands. Our crowded society becomes well spaced all at once, clean and handsome to the eye, a city of magnificent distances. We discover why it was that we never got beyond compliments and surfaces with them before. We become aware as many versts between us and them as there are between a wandering Tartar and a Chinese town. The thoughtful man becomes a hermit in the thoroughfares of the marketplace. Impassable seas suddenly find their level between us, or dumb steeps stretching themselves out there. It is the difference of constitution, of intelligence and faith, and not streams and mountains, that make the true and impassable boundaries between individuals and between states. None but the like-minded can come to our court. I read all the newspapers I could get within a week after this event, and I do not remember in them a single expression of sympathy for these men. I have since seen one noble statement in the Boston paper, not editorial. Some voluminous sheets decided not to print the full report of Brown's words, to the exclusion of other matters. It was as if a publisher should reject the manuscript of the New Testament and print Wilson's last speech. The same journal which contained this pregnant news was chiefly filed in parallel columns with the reports of the political conventions that were being held. But the descent to them was too steep. They should turn from the voice and the deeds of earnest men to the cackling of political conventions, office seekers and speech makers who do not so much as lay an honest egg, but wear their breasts bare upon an egg of chalk. Their great game is the game of straws, or rather, that universal aboriginal game of the platter, at which the Indians cried hub bub. Exclude the reports of political conventions, and religious conventions, and publish the words of a living man. But I object not so much to what they have omitted as to what they have inserted. Even the Liberator called it a misguided, wild, and apparently insane effort. As for the herd of newspapers and magazines, I do not chance to know an editor in the country who will deliberately print anything which he knows will ultimately and permanently reduce the number of his subscribers. They do not believe that it would be expedient. How then can they print truth? If we do not say pleasant things, they argue. Nobody will attend to us. And so, they do like some traveling auctioneers who sing an obscene song in order to draw a crowd around them. Republican editors, obliged to get their sentences ready for the morning edition, and accustomed to look at everything by the twilight of politics, express no admiration, nor true sorrow even, but call these men deluded fanatics, mistaken men, insane or crazed. It suggests what a sane set of editors we are blessed with, not mistaken men, who know very well on which side their bread is buttered, at least. A man does a brave and humane deed, and at once, on all sides, we hear people and parties declaring, "It didn't do it, nor countenance him to do it in any conceivable way. It can't be fairly inferred from my past career." I, for one, am not interested to hear you define your position. I don't know that I ever was, or ever shall be. I think it is mere egotism, or impertinent at this time. Ye needn't take so much pains to wash your skirts of him. No intelligent man will ever be convinced that he was any creature of yours. He went and came, and he himself informs us, under the auspice of John Brown and nobody else. The Republican Party does not perceive how many of his failure will make to vote more correctly than they would have them. They have counted the votes of Pennsylvania and Company, but they have not correctly counted Captain Brown's votes. He was taken the wind out of his sails, the little wind they had, and they may as well lie to and repair. What thought he did not belong to your sorry. What though he did not belong to your clique, though you may not approve of his method or his principles, recognize his magnanimity. Would you not like to claim kindredship with him, in that, though in not other thing he is like, or likely to you? Do you think that you would lose your reputation so? Would you lost at the spiel, you would gain at the bung. If they do not mean all this, then they do not speak the truth and say what they mean. They are simply at their old tricks still. It was always conceded to him, says one who calls him crazy, that he was a conscientious man, very modest in his demeanor, apparently inoffensive, until the subject of slavery was introduced, when he would exhibit a feeling of indignation unparalleled. The slave ship is on her way, crowded with its dying victims. New cargoes are being added in mid-ocean. A small crew of slaveholders, contested by a large body of passengers, is smothering 4 million under the hatches, and yet the politician asserts that the only proper way by which deliverance is to be obtained is by the quiet diffusion of the sentiments of humanity, without any outbreak. As if the sentiments of humanity were ever found unaccompanied by its deeds, and you could disperse them all finished to order, to pure article, as easily as water with a watering pot, and so lay the dust. What is that I hear cast overboard? The bodies of the dead that have found deliverance. That is the way that we are diffusing humanity, and its sentiments worth it. Prominent and influential editors, accustomed to dealing with politicians, men of an infinitely lower grade, say in their ignorance that he acted on the principle of revenge. They did not know the man. They must enlarge themselves to conceive of him. I have no doubt that the time will come when they will begin to see him as he was. They have got to conceive of a man of faith and of religious principle, and not a politician or an Indian. Of a man who did not wait until he was personally inferred with or thwarted with some harmless business before he gave his life to the cause of the oppressed. If Walker may be considered the representative of the South, I wish I could say that Brown was the representative of the North. He was a superior man. He did not value his bodily life in the comparison with ideal things. He did not recognize unjust human laws, but resisted them as he bid. For once we are lifted out of the trivialness and dust of politics into the region of truth and manhood. No man in America has ever stood up so persistently and effectively for the dignity of human nature, knowing himself for a man and the equal of any and all governments. In that sense, he was the most American of all of us. He needed no babbling lawyer making false issues to defend him. He was more than any match for all the judges that American voters or office holders of whatever grade can create. He could not have been tried by a jury of his peers because his peers did not exist. When a man stands up serenely against the condemnation and vengefulness of mankind, rising above them literally by a whole body, even though he were of late the vilest murderer, who had settled that matter with himself, the spectacle is a sublime one. Didn't ye know it, ye liberators, ye tribunes, ye Republicans? And we become criminals in comparison. Do you recognize the honor to recognize him? He needs none of your respects. As for the Democratic journals, they are not human enough to affect me at all. I do not feel indignation at anything that they may say. I am aware that I participate a little, that he will still, at the last accounts, alive in the hands of his foes. But that being the case, I have all along found myself thinking and speaking of him as physically dead. I do not believe in erecting statues to those who still live in our hearts, whose bones have not yet crumbled in the earth around us. But I would rather see the statue of Captain Brown in the Massachusetts State House yard than that of any other man whom I know. I rejoice that I live in this age, that I am his contemporary. What a contrast when we turn to this political party, which is so anxiously shuffling him and his plot out of its way, and looking around for some available slaveholder perhaps to be its candidate, at least for one who will execute the fugitive slave law and all those other unjust laws which he took up arms to annul. An insane, a father, and 6 sons, and 1 son-in-law, and several more men besides, as many at least as 12 disciples, all struck with insanity at once, while the same tyrant holds with a firmer grip than ever his 4,000,000 of slaves, and thousands of sane editors, his abettors, and saving their country and their bacon. Just as insane were his efforts in Kansas. Ask the tyrant who is his most dangerous foe, the sane man or the insane. Do the thousands who know him best, who have rejoiced at his deeds in Kansas, and have afforded him material aid there, think him insane? Such a use of this word is a mere trope with most who persist in using it, and I have no doubt that many of the rest have already in silence retracted their words. Read his admirable words to Mason and others, how they are dwarfed and defeated by the contrast. Half timid questioning. On the other, truth, clear as lightning, Pilat and Gessler and the Inquisition. Sorry. On the other side, half brutish, half timid questioning. On the other side, truth, clear as lightning, crashing into their obscene temples. They are made to stand with Pilat and Gessler and the Inquisition. How ineffectual their speech and action, and what a void their silence. They are but helpless tools in this great work. It was no human power that gathered them about this preacher. What have Massachusetts and the North sent a few sane representatives to Congress for of late years? To declare with effect what kind of sentiments all their speeches put together and boiled down, and probably they themselves will confess it, do not match for manly directness or force, and for simple truth. The few casual remarks of Crazy John Brown on the floor of Harper's Ferry's engine house, that man whom you are about to hang, to send to the other world, though not to represent you there. No, he was not our representative in any sense. He was too fair a specimen of a man to represent the likes of us. Who then were his constituents? If you read his words understandingly, you will find out. In his case, there is no idle eloquence, no maiden speech, no compliments to the oppressor. Truth is his inspirer, and eagerness the polisher of his sentences. He could afford to lose his sharp's rifle, while he retained his faculty of speech, a sharp's rifle, and an infinitely surer and longer range. I think we're going to stop here in a little bit. And the New York Herald reports the convention's verbatim. It does not know of what undying words it is made the vehicle. They have no respect for the penetration of any man who can read the report of that convention or conversation and still call the principle in it insane. It has the ring of a saner sanity than an ordinary disciple in habits of life, than an ordinary organization secure. Take any sentence of it, any question that I can honorably answer, I will, not otherwise. So far as I myself am concerned, I have told everything truthfully. I value my word, sir. The few who talk about his vindictive spirit, while they really admire his heroism, have no test by which to detect a noble man, no amalgam to combine with his pure gold. They mix their own dross with it. Okay, let's bookmark here. I can hear my own sleepiness in my voice, so I hope that the reading was also relaxing for my dreamers. And I appreciate everyone who gets to listen to this. Also, please let me know what you think about this scene today. We went for a little bit of the vertical mode, so I thought that was really nice. And let's see, Thursday. I'm trying to think what we're going to be doing this week. I have to go back and look at last Thursday's stream because I do believe I had something planned for this week because we watched we did the outdoor movie garden watching party last week. So I'll have to go back and look and see what we were supposed to get into. But for now, my dears, Mira, I hope that you enjoy the reading and the format as well so that you can lay in bed and sort of watch this. And it's kind of a little bit more of a cozy format, so we'll do this again. I like it. I think it looks cute. But for now, please enjoy the rest of your week and have sweet dreams wherever you are in the world. I will see you all back here on Thursday at 1900 Eastern Standard Time. Good night, my dears.